Welcome to Stories for Sleep, a place where scientific stories are told slowly, gently, so your mind can soften and your body can gradually drift into natural sleep. On this channel, we are not trying to make you more alert. We are here to help you rest. Each video is a gentle journey through scientific truths about the world and about life. Not dry, not demanding, but shared like a quiet whisper in the night. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to understand every detail. Simply listen and let the words pass through you like a steady rhythmic breath. In today's video, we will explore some of the most calming truths about life on Earth, from creatures that exist in silence to invisible networks that support life, to timelines far longer than a single human lifetime. These stories are not meant to astonish you, but to remind you that life always moves slowly, steadily, and safely. Now find a position that feels truly comfortable, and when you're ready, we can begin. Under the quiet night sky, as light gradually withdraws and the pace of the outside world slows, many of us remain awake. Not because of noise, but because there are still questions gently turning inside us. Where am I within this vast world? What meaning does the life around me hold? And is there some calm, unseen order quietly supporting everything, including myself? We live in a time when information moves quickly and urgently, often leaving the mind tired from constant understanding, analysis, and reaction. But before sleep, the human soul does not crave more knowledge. It craves reassurance. Not definitive answers, but the feeling of being placed within a larger picture, a space where everything has its place, where existence does not need to be proven, only allowed to be. Carl Gustav Jung believed that beneath each person's individual consciousness lies a broader psychological layer, a place where humans connect with nature, with life itself, with ancient images that existed long before we were born. And perhaps nothing touches that deep layer more gently than contemplating life on Earth. This video was not created to make you think more. It was created to slow your breathing, to remind you that life is not only unfolding within human schedules, goals, and worries, but is quietly continuing everywhere beneath the soil, deep in the ocean, inside your body, and even within the tiny pauses between two breaths. In the journey ahead, you will listen to gentle scientific truths about life on Earth, not presented in a rigid way, but like stories whispered at night. These truths may remind you that life can exist in places that seem impossibly harsh, that adaptation matters more than strength, that there is no single blueprint for existence, that all living beings are connected, that the timeline of life stretches far beyond one human lifespan, and that all of us, plants, bacteria, and humans alike, share a deep ancient origin within the universe. From Jung's perspective, when we reflect on life as a whole, the mind begins to soften. The small ego, always worrying, comparing, struggling, gradually steps aside, making room for a broader sensation. I am part of a flow. And when that feeling arises, the body no longer strains to control the mind, no longer rushes to understand. It allows us to rest. This video is an invitation. Not an invitation to learn more, but an invitation to let go, to release heavy thoughts, to release the idea that humans must always be special, always above nature. Instead, try listening to stories of life the way you listen to nighttime rain, without analysis, allowing the sound to spread evenly and safely. As you continue listening, you may notice something very subtle. Life is not rushed, not tense, not trying to prove its worth. It simply exists, adapts, connects, and continues. And within that deep rhythm, you are allowed to do the same, to exist, to breathe, and to rest. Now, as your body begins to soften and your mind becomes ready to slow down, allow these gentle truths about life on Earth to guide you onward. No need to stay alert. No need to force yourself to remember. Just listen and let sleep come to you naturally. When night falls, when light grows dim, and all movement outside becomes slow, people often believe the world itself is entering a state of rest. We look at the dark sky, the silent ground, the distant depths of the sea and think that nothing could be living there. But this is only how human consciousness views the world, through the narrow limits of our senses and our very small range of experience. If Carl Gustav Jung were here, he might smile gently and remind us the most dangerous thing is not the darkness itself, but the belief that we already understand everything that exists within it. Life on Earth, much like the human psyche, does not dwell in the most visible places. It hides, it weaves through it, adapts, and it persists in places consciousness often labels as impossible. Thousands of meters beneath the ocean's surface, where sunlight has never reached, exists a world humanity has only begun to understand in recent decades. There is no day or night, no vivid color, no photosynthesis, the process we once believed was the foundation of all life. And yet in that darkness around hydrothermal vents, life flourishes in abundance. Tiny organisms draw energy from the Earth's chemistry rather than light from the sky. They live by heat, by minerals, by the planet's silent currents. Jung once said that the unconscious is like the deep ocean of the soul. Dark, difficult to access, yet holding the most powerful source of life energy. And the deep ocean of the Earth seems to be telling the very same story. Life does not need light in order to exist. It needs only a source of energy, a capacity for adaptation and time. This truth breaks a very old human belief that only what is clear, bright, and easily seen has value. And just as in the human mind, the deepest, quietest, unnamed parts are often where inner life is most powerfully alive. There are deserts where daytime heat is enough to burn everything, and nights are cold enough to freeze it solid. There are regions of permanent ice where life seems forgotten by time. There are acidic lakes with pH levels capable of corroding metal. There are radioactive zones where humans cannot remain for more than a few minutes. And then we discover life is still there. Bacteria living in acid, creatures surviving in frozen worlds, fungi growing inside nuclear reactors, tiny organisms existing in conditions close to a vacuum, not by fighting the environment, but by becoming part of it. Jung believed that the human psyche operates in much the same way. When placed in extreme conditions, trauma, loss, crisis, human beings do not survive by preserving old structures unchanged, but by transforming. The unconscious adjusts, restructures, and finds new pathways to continue living. Life does not say, "This is impossible." It asks only, "What must change so that I may continue?" Throughout history, humans have drawn boundaries. It is impossible to live here. It is impossible to exist under those conditions. It is impossible to go beyond this limit. And each time science moves forward, those boundaries begin to fade. This reflects a deep psychological truth Jung identified long ago. Consciousness consistently underestimates the potential of the unconscious. We believe we know our limits, while life, both outer and inner, continually shows that these limits exist only in how we see. Just as people often say, "I can't change. I can't get through this. I can't live differently." But life on Earth whispers a very different, very gentle answer. You do not need to know whether you can. You only need to continue. One striking detail is that life in the harshest places is rarely showy. It is not vivid. It does not demand attention. It exists quietly, slowly, persistently. This mirrors the way the unconscious works within us. The unconscious does not argue. It does not explain. It simply continues, adjusts, and guides. Perhaps that is why when we lie down at night, when consciousness grows tired and steps back, we begin to sense our inner life more clearly. Quiet thoughts, unnamed emotions, vague images, all like creatures living in the deep ocean's darkness, always present, simply unseen during the day. One of humanity's greatest illusions is the belief that life can only grow when conditions are good enough. But Earth tells an entirely different story. Life does not wait for ideal conditions. It does not wait for perfect safety. It does not wait for perfection. It begins in crude, fragile, vulnerable conditions and then adapts. Jung believed psychological growth does not occur in perfect circumstances either. It happens in conflict, in darkness, in moments where change is necessary to avoid collapse. Life does not ask, "Is this good enough?" It asks, "What can I do with what is here?" There is a deep reason stories of life have a soothing effect, not because they are dull, but because they reassure something very ancient within us. When we hear that life exists at the ocean's floor, in ice, in acid, in radiation, an unconscious message is delivered. If life can exist there, perhaps I can exist within my own conditions too. Personal worries shrink. Tension softens. The ego releases its grip on control. We no longer have to try to live. We simply allow life within us to continue. In darkness, when the world is no longer clearly visible, the greatest stories become the simplest. And the story of life on Earth whispers something kind. You do not need to be in the right place at the right time under the right conditions in order to live. You only need to still be here. Like life in the deep sea, in ice, in acid, your mind can also exist, adapt, and continue even when you feel you are in an impossible place. And perhaps it is in the moment just before sleep, when everything slows, that you feel this most clearly. Adaptation is the greatest power of life toward life. Exists through adaptation. In the previous section, we quietly passed through a truth that calms the mind. Life does not exist only where conditions are favorable, but also in darkness, ice, acid, radiation, and near emptiness. If life can appear everywhere, the next natural, deeply human question is how? What allows life to continue to arise, to persist, when every condition seems to oppose it? The answer is not strength in the usual sense, not rigidity, not dominance over the environment. The answer lies in something quieter, softer, yet far deeper and more enduring: adaptation. And when we understand this about life, we begin to understand it about ourselves. As children, we are often taught that survival requires strength, stronger than others, harder, more resistant, unbending, unchanging. But life on Earth, over billions of years, tells a completely different story. A story not spoken through roaring force, but through flexibility. Not through permanence, but through constant transformation. Carl Gustav Jung, in studying the human psyche, recognized this early. He wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. There is no single way to live, no fixed structure that survives every condition. What is right today may not be right tomorrow." Life at its deepest level has always known this. Some organisms can freeze completely for years, even decades, with hearts stopped and metabolism nearly absent. When conditions improve, they simply resume living. No panic, no resistance to winter, no belief that pausing is failure. They wait. Jung believed there are psychological phases when a person cannot move forward, cannot grow, cannot do anything. Society often labels these phases as stagnation or uselessness, but from a deeper view they may be the soul's hibernation. Not all life grows continuously. Sometimes to survive we must pause. Life understands that stopping is not death, it is another form of adaptation. Some fish are born female and become male when needed. Some organisms completely change their biological roles to suit social or environmental structures. Life does not ask, "Who am I forever?" It asks, "Who must I become right now?" Jung called rigid ego identities traps of consciousness. When a person fully identifies with a fixed self-image, "I am this way, I cannot change, I must always be like this," psychological life begins to suffocate. In Psychological Types, Jung wrote that maturity comes from flexibility between inner opposites. Life is not loyal to an image of itself, it is loyal to existence. Some organisms lose limbs, tails, even parts of the brain, and then regenerate them over time. They do not live in regret. They do not mourn endlessly what was lost. They do not define themselves by absence. They rebuild. In Jungian psychology, this mirrors individuation, the process by which a person restructures after trauma, not by returning to the old form, but by becoming something new, more fitting. Life does not return to the past. It moves forward, carrying loss as part of a new structure. Some organisms sleep for years, waiting for rain, for warmth, for opportunity. During that time, they do nothing, yet they are not dead. This contrasts sharply with modern human life, where value is tied to constant activity. Jung warned that obsession with activity can sever people from the soul's deeper biological rhythm. The unconscious has its own tempo, and forcing oneself to always move forward can cause inner fracture. Life does not live by schedules. It lives by its own rhythm. Humans once believed oxygen was essential for life, until organisms were discovered that require none. This is not only a biological discovery, it is a powerful metaphor. Humans often believe, I can only live if this condition exists, if that person changes, if circumstances improve. But life shows that what we believe is necessary is often just familiarity. Adaptation means daring to live without what we once thought indispensable. Some organisms draw energy from rock, from metal, from substances useless to humans. They do not demand ideal environments. They transform what is available. Jung believed humans can also transform indigestible experiences, pain, disappointment, trauma, into depth and understanding, but only if we do not reject them outright. Life does not filter reality. It learns to digest reality. Life adapts not only to survive, but to create, to glow in darkness, to generate electricity, to fly, to run on water. Not to be special, but because this is the most effective way to live within specific conditions. Jung wrote, one cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. We cannot solve new circumstances with old structures. Adaptation is not weakness. It is the highest expression of living intelligence. Rigid trees break in storms. Flexible trees bend with the wind. This is true not only in nature but in the psyche. The most rigid individuals are often the most vulnerable to change. Jung believed that when the ego becomes too rigid, it stops hearing the unconscious, which constantly seeks balance. Flexibility is not a lack of strength. It is strength at a deeper level. There is a reason stories of adaptation make people sleepy. They whisper, you do not need to be harder. You do not need to tense yourself. You only need to soften slightly. If life can adapt across billions of years, perhaps tonight, you do not need to force yourself so much. In darkness, life does not demand strength. It invites gentleness toward oneself, not resisting fatigue, not denying emotion, not punishing yourself for not being okay. Sometimes the best way to survive is to change shape, not essence. Life on Earth does not win through power. It exists through softness, through listening to the environment, through changing when needed, and stopping when needed. And as you lie here in the night listening to these words, perhaps a very ancient part of you is beginning to realize you do not need to be strong to keep living. You only need to be flexible enough not to break. In the previous section, we quietly recognized a truth that eases much of the invisible pressure people often carry. Life does not endure through rigidity, but through flexibility. And yet, as we look more deeply into the larger picture of Earth, another question begins to arise. Not loudly, not urgently, but softly like a breath. If life is so flexible, is there only one right way to live? The answer nature offers, through billions of years of evolution, is a very gentle one. No. There is no single template for life. There is no single form, no single intelligence, no single way of existing that can be considered an absolute standard. And it is precisely this diversity, not uniformity, that has allowed Earth to remain alive until today. When humans look at the world, we often unconsciously place ourselves at the center, We evaluate other beings based on how close they are to humans, whether they have brains like ours, language like ours, societies like ours, emotions like ours. But nature has never accepted such a center. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "Every form of life is a compromise between the inner necessity and the demands of the environment. Each form of life is a unique compromise between inner need and the outer world. No single form can serve as a universal standard. And when we look at life on Earth, we begin to understand this. Each species is a different answer to the same question of survival. Bacteria, the intelligence of simplicity bacteria, are among the oldest forms of life on this planet. They existed long before plants and animals, and far before humans. They have no brains, no emotions in the human sense, no personality. Yet bacteria know how to live. They exchange chemical information. They cooperate in communities. They adapt faster than any other form of life. They survive conditions that no more complex organism can endure. If intelligence is measured by the presence of a brain, bacteria are not intelligent. But if intelligence is measured by longevity, bacteria are masters. Jung believed that humans often confuse complexity with superiority. Yet the unconscious, like life itself, often chooses the simplest path that works. Not all intelligence needs to resemble human intelligence. Plants' intelligence without movement. Plants do not flee, they do not hunt, they have no brains, and yet plants know. They know when to grow leaves, they know when to shed them, they know when to send warning signals to other plants. They know when to cooperate with fungi, insects, and microorganisms. Plants communicate through chemicals, through vibrations, through underground networks of roots and fungi. They do not think as humans do, yet they respond to their environment with astonishing precision. Jung emphasized that consciousness is not the only form of awareness. He wrote, "Consciousness is not the only form of psychic life. Not all perception requires the light of consciousness. Some intelligences operate entirely in silence. Fungi life. Beyond the individual fungi are not plants, not animals, not bacteria. They exist as networks. Most of a fungus's body is not above ground. It lies beneath the soil, spreading outward, connecting trees, transporting nutrients and sharing information. A forest does not live as isolated trees. It lives as a network. This forces us to reconsider a fundamental question. Must life exist as independent individuals? Jung believed that the personal ego is only a small surface of the psyche. Beneath it lies the collective unconscious, where humans are connected more deeply than they realize. Life is not always I. Sometimes it is we. Insects, societies without a large ego, ants, bees, termites. They have no prominent individuality. No leaders in the human sense, no strong personal consciousness. Yet they build societies that are organized, efficient, and resilient, not because each individual is brilliant, but because the structure itself is intelligent. Humans often believe societies survive because of exceptional individuals. Insects reveal another model. Life can function well, even when the individual ego is small. Jung warned that when the human ego becomes too inflated, it disconnects from the collective psychic flow, leading to imbalance. Fish, birds, reptiles, the intelligence of form. Each animal species has a body structure, sensory system, and behavior entirely its own. Fish live in water and sense the world through pressure and currents. Birds live in the air and navigate using magnetic fields. Reptiles sense heat rather than complex emotions. None of these beings are lacking compared to humans. They are simply suited to their own worlds. There is no single world shared by all species. Each form of life creates the world it can inhabit. This reflects a deep Jungian insight. Each person's psychological reality is a unique world shaped by the structure of their mind. Mammals' emotion is not exclusive to humans. Humans once believed deep emotion belonged only to them. But mammals love their young, grieve, bond, feel anxiety and joy. They do not need complex language to feel. They live through the body, through heartbeat, through connection. Jung believed emotion is the oldest language of the psyche, long predating rational thought. Humans do not own emotion. We simply name what life has always known. Humans, one form among many humans, have large brains, language, culture. But we are not the pinnacle, we are a branch. Jung wrote in, "The undiscovered self-man is not a creature of reason alone." Humans live not only through logic, but through the unconscious instinct and symbol, like all other life forms, only more complex. Humans are not separate from nature. We are one way nature experiments with life. There is no single definition of intelligence. If intelligence means survival, bacteria are intelligent. If intelligence means cooperation, fungi are intelligent. If intelligence means subtle perception, animals are intelligent. If intelligence means symbolic capacity, humans are intelligent. Intelligence has no single form. It has countless expressions. When we hear this, the human ego softens. There is a deep relief in realizing we do not need to be the standard. We do not need to live like others. Think in one prescribed way. Feel according to a fixed pattern. Jung believed psychological crises often arise when people try to live according to an image that does not belong to them. Nature does not ask you to resemble anyone else. It asks only that you fit your own form of life. Diversity is how life protects itself. If there were only one way to live, life would have gone extinct long ago. Diversity is the shield. And in the quiet of the night, a gentle message emerges. You are not wrong for being different. You are not less because you do not conform. You are simply another answer. Life has no template, no correct shape, no single path. There are only countless ways to continue existing. And as you lie here in the darkness listening to this story, perhaps your mind is beginning to understand. You do not need to become someone else to deserve life. You only need to be your own form of life. Toward never alone. In the previous section, we touched a truth that eases much of the unconscious pressure people carry. There is no single template for life. Each species is a different answer. Each form of existence is a unique response. There is no absolute right, only what fits. But as the picture widens, a deeper question appears, no longer about how life exists, but how it exists together. If there is no shared template, if each species follows its own path, what keeps all life on Earth from falling apart? The answer is not pure competition, not the strong eliminating the weak, not isolation. The answer is connection. And just like the human mind, seemingly individual, personal, enclosed life only truly exists when interwoven. Life is a network, never alone. When humans think of life, we often imagine independent beings, a predator hunting alone, a solitary tree, a person existing by themselves. But the deeper we look into nature, the more this image dissolves. Life does not appear as scattered points. It appears as a network, intricate, interlaced, and silent. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in, "The archetypes and the collective, unconscious man is not an island. Humans are not islands. And life in any form has never existed alone. The human body, a living ecosystem. Let us begin with what is closest to you, your own body. You may think of yourself as a single individual, but in truth, you are a community. Within your body live tens of trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, in your gut, on your skin, in your mouth, in your lungs. They help you digest food, synthesize vitamins, regulate immunity, influence emotions, affect sleep, even shape how you think. If they all disappeared, you could not live. You do not have life. You are a place where life coexists. Jung believed the ego is only the surface of the psyche. Beneath it lies the personal unconscious, and deeper still the collective unconscious, where humans connect beyond awareness. Your biological body mirrors this clearly. You are not a closed center, but a node within a living network. No organism lives alone. The more we study nature, the clearer it becomes. No organism exists in complete isolation. Trees need fungi to absorb nutrients. Fungi need trees for carbon. Animals need bacteria to digest food. Bacteria need environments shaped by other organisms. Even top predators depend on entire ecosystems beneath them. The concept of survival of the fittest has been overemphasized, leading people to believe life persists mainly through elimination. In reality, cooperation and symbiosis are the foundation of longevity. Competition may create short-term change. Connection creates long-term life. A forest is not a collection of trees, it is a nervous system. Beneath forest soil lies a vast network known as the mycorrhizal network, fungal threads connecting tree roots. Through this network, trees share nutrients. Stronger trees support weaker ones. Warning signals about pests are transmitted. Young trees are nourished. A healthy forest is not one where each tree fends for itself. It is one where sharing occurs. Jung believed the human mind does not function as isolated units either. In The Symbolic Life, he wrote, "The collective unconscious is a universal substratum of the psyche. The collective unconscious is the common ground of the human mind. Just as soil is the common ground of a forest, a single tree may survive alone, but a forest survives through connection. Symbiosis, when two species become a new system. There are relationships in nature where, if separated, neither side could survive. Lichens are a union of fungi and algae. Coral reefs are a cooperation between animals and microorganisms. Humans exist in symbiosis with their microbiome. Not two, but a new system. This breaks a deeply rooted human assumption that each living being is a closed, independent unit. In reality, much of life exists only when it is joined together. Jung believed that human identity is also formed through relationships with parents, with community, with collective symbols. No one creates themselves from nothing. There is no pure ego. There is only an ego formed through connection. Communication without words. Trees do not speak. Bacteria do not speak. Fungi do not speak. And yet they are constantly communicating through chemicals, through vibrations, through light, through electrical signals. Life does not need language to understand itself. It needs connection. Jung believed that most human communication also does not happen through words. Emotion, intuition, and symbols are all forms of unconscious exchange. Silence does not mean isolation. It can be a deeper form of connection. Society does not belong only to humans. Ants build cities. Bees organize labor. Fish move in schools. Birds fly in formation. There are no constitutions, no abstract language, and yet there is order. Society does not require complex individual consciousness to exist. It requires mutual adjustment. Jung believed modern humans often suffer because they are cut off from their natural communities, both outer and inner. Loneliness is not a natural state of life. It is often a sign of broken connection. Competition does not disappear, but it is not the center. What matters is this: nature does not deny competition, but competition is not the whole story. Competition exists within a larger frame, the frame of interdependence. When one species goes extinct, many others are affected. When one link breaks, the entire network trembles. This mirrors the human psyche. Exactly when one part is denied, the whole system loses balance. Jung called these split-off parts the shadow. And when the shadow is not acknowledged, it influences the entire personality. Nothing exists in isolation without consequence. At night, loneliness softens. There is a deep reason stories of connection make us sleepy. They speak to the most ancient part of us and say, "You are not alone. You have never been alone." Even as you lie in this quiet room, your body is a community, your mind is a meeting point, and life is flowing through you without pause. Life does not ask who wins, it asks who remains connected. The most resilient ecosystems are not those with the strongest individuals, but those where connections are maintained. The same is true for humans. We do not break because we are weak. We break because we are cut off from our supporting networks. Life is not afraid of fragility. It is afraid of isolation. Networks are the true shape of life. Seen from a distance, life does not resemble a pyramid. It resembles a web, a current, a breath following another breath. And in the night, as consciousness loosens, you may be sensing this. You do not have to stand alone. You are being held by something much larger. Life does not exist through isolation. It exists through connection, through sharing, through mutual dependence. And as you listen to this in the dark, perhaps a very deep part of you is exhaling, I do not have to carry everything alone. I never did. The time of life far exceeds the time of humans. In the previous section, we listened to a gentle truth. Life is never alone. It exists as a network where each being supports another. But when we look at that network, a deeper question arises, not about who connects with whom, but about how long. How long does such a network take to form? How long does a life find its place in the larger picture? And where does human time, short, urgent, stand within that flow? Nature does not answer in a hurry. It does not speak in years, decades, or lifetimes. It speaks in hundreds, thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of years. The time of life far exceeds the time of humans. And when we feel this, the human mind, always tense from not enough time, begins to soften. Humans live by clocks, schedules, ages, deadlines of what must be achieved before it's too late. But life on Earth does not know clocks. It does not know deadlines. It does not rush to become anything. Life stays, and in staying it stretches time until the human ego is no longer at the center. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "We live in time, but we do not know it. We live in time, but we do not truly understand it. And perhaps because we do not understand it, we fear it. Beings that live longer than human memory. There are beings on Earth that have lived for hundreds, even thousands of years. Ancient trees that sprouted before nations, religions, or modern languages existed. Animals that grow slowly across centuries. Deep-sea organisms living in the unchanging rhythm of the ocean. They are not young or old in human terms. They simply continue. Standing before such life, humans often feel small. But this is not diminishment, it is reorientation. Humans are not reduced. They are placed within a larger picture. Jung believed many modern psychological crises arise because the ego believes it must be the center of everything, including time. When that center expands, pressure naturally dissolves. Sleeping seeds, time is not the enemy. Some seeds have lain dormant for tens of thousands of years, buried beneath ice and soil, in conditions that seem to end all possibility of life. Then one day, when conditions are right, they sprout. No regret for time past. No panic that it is too late. No memory of waiting. They do what life always does, begin when the time comes. For humans, this is a profound lesson. Jung emphasized that the unconscious does not operate on the schedule of consciousness. He wrote, "The unconscious is timeless. The unconscious does not count years. It does not hurry. There are parts of you that are not late. They are simply waiting for the right season." Ancient DNA, memory, beyond the mind. Humans often believe memory lives in the brain, but life shows that memory also lives in the body, in DNA, in biological structures passed through countless generations. Ancient DNA carries information from beings who lived long before humans appeared. Many of your reflexes, fears, emotions, and adaptations did not begin in your lifetime. Jung called this the collective unconscious. He wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "The collective unconscious is a part of the psyche which can be negatively distinguished from a personal unconscious by the fact that it does not owe its existence to personal experience. The collective unconscious does not arise from personal experience, but from the deep history of the species. You carry more time within you than you realize. You are not living only one life. You are continuing many lives. Life forms that hardly change over hundreds of millions of years. Some organisms have existed almost unchanged for hundreds of millions of years, not because they are outdated, but because their form was sufficient. Life is not obligated to progress in the way humans define progress. Sometimes remaining the same is a form of wisdom. Jung warned that modern humans often equate constant change with growth, losing respect for structures that have endured. Not all change is evolution, and not all stability is stagnation. The time of life is not linear. Humans imagine time as a straight line: past, present, future. But life moves in cycles: birth, growth, decay, birth. Like seasons, like breathing, like sleep. Jung believed the human psyche also operates in cycles, not lines. In The Stages of Life, he wrote, "Life has always seemed to me like a plant that lives on its rhizome. Life is like a plant sustained by underground roots, not only what appears above ground. There are phases where no progress is visible, yet roots are growing. When time expands, anxiety softens. Much human anxiety comes from the feeling of not enough time to live, to understand, to love, to become. But when we place our lives within the time scale of life, millions of years, urgency begins to dissolve. You are not slow. You are simply measuring yourself against a rhythm that is not yours. Smallness is not meaninglessness. When humans realize their smallness before the time of life, two responses arise: fear or peace. Jung believed psychological maturity comes when one accepts not being the center of the universe, while still having meaning within the whole. Being small within a vast current does not erase you. It places you correctly. Life is never in a hurry, yet it never stops. No species panics about the future. No tree fears winter before it arrives. No seed worries it has slept too long. Life moves forward with unconscious patience. Jung wrote in The Symbolic Life, "Patience is the most valuable quality of the soul. Time is not working against you. It is working for you in ways you cannot yet see." At night, the human mind touches deep time. Night is when clocks lose their power. As you lie down, linear time recedes. Dreams, memories, images blend. The mind returns to the time of life, slow, deep, unmeasured. You are not wasting time when you sleep. You are returning to real time. Life's final whisper in the night. As you listen to this story, perhaps a part of you is breathing more slowly. Not because you understand everything, but because you no longer have to hurry. You are not late. You are not slow. You are in your own rhythm within a much larger current. The time of life far exceeds the time of humans. But this does not make a human life meaningless. On the contrary, it places your life within a longer, deeper, gentler story. And as you lie here in the night, between steady breaths, let the idea of time dissolve and allow the life within you to continue unhurried, unforced, unafraid. All life shares a common origin. In the previous part, we quietly stepped away from the human clock and entered a deeper current of life's time, where thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of years pass without needing to be remembered, without needing to be counted, only needing to continue. When time stretches that far, something very subtle begins to happen in the human mind. The ego becomes smaller, not in a way that makes us disappear, but in a way that places us correctly. And when the ego no longer occupies the entire center, a final question, also the deepest one, begins to arise very softly. If all life flows together in such a vast current of time, are they truly separate, or are they simply different? Forms of the same story? The answer that science and contemplation whisper together is this: all life shares a common origin. And when we touch this idea, the boundary between us and the world begins to dissolve, very gently. Human beings often feel lonely because they believe they are individuals thrown into a vast, unfamiliar universe. But the deeper we understand life, the clearer it becomes. We were never thrown anywhere. We were born from this very flow. Every living being on Earth, from the smallest bacterium to the human being, uses the same genetic alphabet. 4 simple letters repeat, combine, and transform, creating countless forms of life. Diversity does not come from different foundations. It comes from a shared foundation written in countless ways. Carl Gustav Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "The collective unconscious is identical in all individuals and is therefore one and the same everywhere." The collective unconscious is one and the same in all individuals. Biological life is the same. One foundation, countless expressions. Whether plants, fungi, insects, fish, birds, mammals, or humans, all write life using the same system of code. There is no higher DNA or lower DNA. No living being is written in a different language. The difference lies not in the origin, but in how the story is told. This carries a deep psychological meaning. Jung believed that humans differ in personality, culture, and belief, yet share the same archetypes at the deepest level of the psyche. Like DNA, archetypes are the foundational letters of human experience. The atoms in you have been many other things. The carbon atoms in your body may once have been part of an ancient tree. The oxygen atoms may once have drifted through an ancient ocean. The iron atoms in your blood were born in stellar explosions long before Earth existed. You do not carry only personal history. You carry the history of the universe. Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "In the final analysis, we count for something only because of the essential we embody, and if we do not embody that, life is wasted." What you carry at your core is not only your personal story, but the continuation of a far deeper history. Humans are not outside of nature. One of the greatest illusions of modern humans is the belief that we stand outside nature, observing it, controlling it, exploiting it. But both biology and depth psychology say the opposite. Humans are an expression of nature becoming conscious of itself. Jung believed that when humans sever their connection with nature, both outer and inner, they lose psychological balance. He wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, "We are so captivated by and entangled in our subjective consciousness that we have forgotten the age-old fact that God speaks chiefly through dreams and visions." Here, God is not a narrow religious concept, but the deep source of life speaking to humans through symbols, dreams, and nature itself. The universe is not far away, it is inside you. Humans often look up at the sky and think the universe is out there. But the truth is, the universe entered you long ago. Every atom in your body was once part of space. Every cell is the result of billions of years of cosmic evolution. You do not live in the universe. The universe lives in you. Jung wrote, "The psyche is not of today. Its ancestry goes back many millions of years. The mind does not belong only to the present. Its origins stretch back millions of years. When boundaries dissolve, loneliness dissolves. Too much of human loneliness does not come from a lack of people nearby, but from the feeling of being cut off from the whole. When we realize that our bodies are made of the same material as plants, our minds share deep structures with others. The life within us continues life from long ago. The sense of being cast out begins to fade. You are not a lost individual. You are a point of convergence. Life has no inside and outside. When seen deeply enough, the boundary between inside and outside blurs. The breath you inhale was once trees. The food you eat was once soil. Your thoughts carry traces of collective history. Jung called the realization of this the integration of the ego with the self, a state in which humans no longer feel opposed to the world. You are not inside life. You are life becoming aware of itself. All living beings are distant relatives. There are no foreign beings on Earth, only close and distant relatives. Bacteria in the soil and cells in your body follow the same principles. Plants and humans share more genes than we often imagine. Difference is surface. Kinship is depth. Jung believed that recognizing this deep connection fosters spiritual humility, not self-diminishment, but proper placement. When the ego softens, sleep comes more easily. There is a reason reflections on shared origin make us sleepy, because the ego, always guarding boundaries, gets to rest, no longer needing to stand alone, no longer needing to oppose the world. When separation fades, the mind no longer needs to remain tense. Life is a story telling itself. All life is not a random collection. It is a long story telling itself through countless forms. Humans are a chapter within it, not the final chapter, not the first, but a chapter aware of the story. Jung wrote in The Red Book, "I am a part of the same life that lives in you." When you sleep, you return to the source. Sleep is the moment when consciousness dissolves. The ego softens. The unconscious expands. It is when humans come closest to the shared source of life, where there are no divisions, no names, no roles. Sleep is not disappearance. Sleep is return. All life shares a common origin. No being has been abandoned. No human stands outside the story. And as you lie here in the night listening to these words, perhaps a very deep part of you is realizing, I do not need to find my place in the universe. I have always been there. And now, as we reach the final words of this story, perhaps you are lying in a quieter space. Your breath slows. Your body becomes a little heavier. The boundaries between thought and feeling soften like water when the wind has stopped. We have traveled far together, not in space, but in depth. From the harshest places on Earth where life persists. From the gentle yet extraordinary adaptability of living beings. From the diversity without a single template. From the silent networks that support all existence. From a timeline longer than human imagination. And finally, from the realization that all life, including you, shares a deep common origin. If there is one thread running through this entire journey, it is this. Life is not hurried, not loud, not eager to prove anything. It simply continues in its own rhythm, through flexibility, through connection, through ancient patience. Carl Gustav Jung believed that when humans feel lost, tense, or directionless, it is not because they lack answers, but because they have lost contact with the larger picture. The small ego is placed at the center and must carry too much. It must be right, strong, fast, good enough on time. But when that ego is returned to its rightful place as part of the whole, something remarkable happens. Not because all problems vanish, but because the strain of holding everything together dissolves. Humans begin to breathe with life rather than against it. Perhaps right now you do not need to fully understand every idea, every image, every connection. You do not need to remember how many scientific facts you have heard. Your mind, like nature, knows how to keep what is needed and let the rest drift away. The unconscious will continue its quiet work while you sleep. And perhaps the most important thing this story wants to whisper to you before the night deepens is something very simple. You do not need to try so hard to belong. You already belong. You belong to this earth where life emerged long before names existed. You belong to a timeline longer than a single lifetime. You belong to a network of connections through which every breath passes. You belong to a cosmic story telling itself through countless forms, including your form right now. When you feel tired, it does not mean you are weak. When you slow down, it does not mean you are falling behind. When you need rest, it is not failure, it is a natural movement of life. Like seeds sleeping in the soil. Like trees shedding leaves before winter. Like the deep ocean continuing to move beneath a calm surface. In this moment, as the light has softened and the outside world asks nothing of you, allow yourself to be no one in particular. No role, no goal, no comparison. Just a small, real part being held by something far greater. If you feel small, remember small does not mean meaningless. A single cell carries the entire map of life. A brief moment still belongs to eternity. A quiet sleep is an essential part of existence. And as you are about to close your eyes, let this idea pass through you like a very gentle breeze. You do not have to carry the world. You only need to let the world hold you tonight. Now, if you wish, close your eyes. Relax your jaw. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath slow just a little. May you have a deep sleep where the mind rests in the ancient rhythm of life. May you have gentle dreams where the unconscious whispers in soft images. May your body restore, your heart soften, and your soul return closer to itself. Nothing more to do. nothing more to think. Sleep well.